Excellent, thanks.
All right, I'll count you in. So, all right, 3, 2, 1.
¿Qué pasa, campeones? Welcome to the Churros y Tácticas podcast. It is Wednesday, the 4th of January. The first Churros of 2023 is in full effect. And unfortunately, we're going to start it on a little bit of a somber note. You probably noticed from the intro, it wasn't as lavish as probably our usual first editions of the new year are, where we might let off, some fireworks or a few firecrackers or two. Unfortunately, we have to start this show and the first episode of the year a little bit on a somber tone, mainly or entirely due to the passing of the late great Simon Hanley, my former boss, the person I owe everything to, what I have accomplished in these what has it been, 6-7 years since I started this crazy journey in sports journalism, broadcasting. I have just come back from the funeral, so I asked Keon, can I just dedicate a few words to Simon Hanley, a man that, like I said, worked with, was my boss, shared, thoughts with in the newsroom, and a few beers with in the bar downstairs. Moments like these, Keon, it makes me kind of mad at myself that I didn't maybe have a few more beers in the bar downstairs, meaning that I didn't get to know the people that I work with and I actually admire, that I didn't get to know them more personally and better when I had the chance. It's always, many of us start the New Year's with all kinds of New Year's resolutions, and this one is always sort of at the top of my list, and I haven't really pulled the trigger on it fully, and that's network more. And that, I don't want it to come off sounding too businessy from a business mindset, although surely, that's also part of it, right? I mean, I think the two go hand in hand, meaning becoming closer to a person, talking to a person, sharing thoughts, laughs, debates, like you and I do on this podcast twice a week. And if from those also, obviously business opportunities flourish, well, then so be it, and even better. My point being is that today, listening to his son have a very beautiful speech, a very emotive speech. If to give you a very brief sort of recap on the life of Simon and the Hanley family, the Spanish Hanley family, and his son Jordi, they had him and Simon had to live and experience the passing of, in Jordi's case, his mom, and in Simon's case, his wife, when he was just 3 years old, when Jordi was just 3 years old. So he was taken care of by Simon, and they were just father and son. And Jordi was explaining how his father did everything for him, was the best father you could ever have. And unfortunately, in the case of Jordi Hanley, now also having to say goodbye to his father, who had just turned 60 years old. Keon was born exactly 60 years ago. He died on his birthday. And he made it. Jordi, like I said, his son gave a very beautiful speech where it was good to see a lot of his father in him as well. And he said, my father made it until the very end. He leaves the world giving a big old middle finger and saying, I got to 60, you assholes. And for me, just from Simon, like I said, I'm just eternally grateful to him for taking a gamble on somebody without any prior journalism or broadcasting experience and stand in front of the camera and talk about football. And, luckily at that point also get paid a salary for it. And I've just, I don't know, it's thanks to him, thanks to Graham Hunter for introducing me to Simon, that has allowed me to where I am today, to be where I am today. So rest in peace, Simon. I know you're up there with a beer, playing golf, and listening to music. So here's a toast with a cup of tea to Simon. He would have wanted to be a beer, that's for sure. But your memory will last forever, my friend.
Thank you, man. That was beautiful. It's nice to hear that perspective and people who were from at the funeral and knew him. I never knew Simon personally. I'm not even sure if I had the privilege of being in the same room as him, although I think it's very possible we had crossed paths at some point because
Surely.
he's a La Liga TV commentator
Yeah.
in the end, right? And so, some of those, it's so busy press row and there's so many different sections and the commentators sit in a different place. So I'm sure I've maybe been close to him, but I never actually had the privilege of speaking with him, unfortunately. But I've heard great things. I've heard nothing but great things about him. People from you've been always singing his praises and talking about how important he's been in your career and how much of a good guy he was. And also, obviously, I know him indirectly because I've heard his voice so much on La Liga TV, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was
And
like
it's
the La Liga
impossible.
TV's dad, like the father of La Liga TV.
Yeah, and it's impossible not to feel his loss and also just not speak about him in a podcast like this that is Churros y Tácticas about Spanish football in
Yeah.
English. And he is, whatever way you spin it, whether you knew him personally or not, he was a pioneer of English content of
Yeah.
Spanish football
Yeah.
for people who consume it in English, right?
Absolutely.
And so
Exactly.
my respects to him, my best of wishes and love to his family. And thank you for speaking about him. I'm glad you had that perspective to share on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. And I'm happy as well that see him and recognize him as that, right? Such a recognizable face and particular voice of La Liga TV, and defining him as a pioneer, certainly, I think, adequate and accurate, because it was that. It's a pioneering project that started, those 7 years ago now, that, yeah, man, he led that. He led that. So it is what it is, thanks to Simon. Interestingly enough, I was speaking with Andy West, and he was, obviously, I mean, the people that were there was the A-list of football journalism and broadcasting, and speaking with some of them, they had to. Pete Jensen, and as a matter of fact, is taking over Simon Hanley's show, which they were recording later today, this afternoon. Now, in fact, they're doing it now. And Andy West was also going to go on the show. And yeah, no, just realizing that it's quite a fitting moment to have the ceremony, and then the show be on the day where he would normally present it, the Wednesday show, which was very different from the Viva La Liga. So Viva La Liga. We're on the Thursday show. Yep. I had the pleasure to present. Well, ours was more of a magazine type of show, whereas his show, the Wednesday show, was more of a debate show where he had 4 guests sit around in these like big comfy chairs and just talk or debate about football. And it was very suiting. It was very fitting to him, his character. And may the show live on. I'm sure Pete Jensen will do justice. And today, I don't know who else was on, but Andy West was one. So his memory will live on, that's for sure.
Yeah, may the show live on, and his memory for sure will live on. There's no question. I'm glad we took some time to start the podcast to speak about Simon. And Simon obviously would be more than pleased to talk about football as well. So why don't we transition to football?
Yes.
And I don't.
He was a big Newcastle fan, so this was a good season for him. Newcastle in 4th. This is it's crazy what's going in the Premier.
But the Premier League is just amazing drama and amazing just stories and just amazing things happening in the Premier League every day. However, closer to home, Diego.
Yeah.
What's going on with Barca? So many questions for you, man. I have so many questions for you. And it pains me to have all these questions for you because I know I can't get a straight answer out of you on the pre-show. It's a pre-show today. But I'm going to try. But actually, before I try, why don't we get your thoughts on Barça Espanyol?
Wow, it seems like an eternity ago.
Yeah. I have to go back to my notes just to remember what happened.
Yeah, so do I, as a matter of fact. So why don't I do that a little bit? Sorry, I have to say I just came back.
Well, you can start with the easy stuff, right? You can start with the easy stuff,
Yeah,
like,
well, I think that
Espanyol. Not happy with Lewandowski getting to play that game. Didn't matter in the end, but
okay. Well, we can talk about that. The impact of Robert Lewandowski being allowed to play that game. Uh, well, do you want to talk about that? I mean, that is it's quite a long topic in and of itself, which I think we have to talk about the Spanish Football Federation and TAS and the Association of Referees, the Refereeing Association, excuse me.
right.
Barça are in their good right to appeal the decision. The fact that the refereeing association took so long to admit or submit that request, let's say, that was really the cause for Lewandowski being allowed to play, because it was like, okay, it's officially being now looked at when they had already that time to look at. But it was the holidays, everybody's with their families, no work is being done, etc. Come out all of the Spanish stereotypes that you want. But I think that's where the conversation needs to be held or pointed at. That should be, let's say, put into the discussion, as opposed to pointing the finger at Barça and Laporta and saying, well, or the board, and saying, there was foul play here. Barça did what any club would do, and that is, appeal the decision. You said not that it mattered in the end. He didn't score. He had many, many chances. I thought Álvaro Fernández, much like Courtois against Valladolid, were men of the match in that sense. They both kept their teams in the game. I recently saw a list go around on Twitter. I think it was Barça Spaces, actually. And Robert Lewandowski at the moment heads the list of the biggest missed chances in the top 5 leagues, or I don't know how, European leagues. I don't know if top 5, top 3. I'm not entirely sure. But
let me look that up. I'm curious now.
I think it was Barça Spaces.
I imagine it's also partly, I don't know, that's the first time I've heard of that. I'm going to look it up, but I imagine it's probably down in some part due to the fact that he also gets a lot of chances. So naturally, when you score the most goals, have the most chances, you're also going to miss the most chances too. That's just the nature of the beast. It's much like players like Modric or De Bruyne, who attempt very high degree of difficulty passes at a high volume. Their passing percentage is going to be lower.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Continue. I cut you off.
No, it's just let me round out the point. You said it, it didn't really matter because he didn't score. I mean, he was the one that had the best chances, and he didn't materialize those through Álvaro Fernández. It's, of course, it's evident to say, despite the fact that Barça are the second highest scoring team in La Liga, just 1 goal behind Real Madrid.
Really? We surpassed you guys?
Yes.
For the longest time, I was like, I didn't think we would ever catch up to Barca with regards to goals scored.
And even though Barca are the number 1 team with least goals conceded, just 6, or that should be 7 now.
Oh, that's what it is. It's the goals conceded that will never catch up to you guys. That's the one.
So despite those facts, I think it's clear to say, and an evident, fact, that Barca are missing other players stepping up and scoring more goals. Having said that, we talked about it, I think 2-3 podcasts ago, just the amount of other goal scorers that there are. They're not a lot, meaning their goal tally is not a lot. I think the highest one is Ferran Torres with 4 or 5 goals. It's between those two. But then he has a string of assists as well. Same goes for Ousmane Dembélé, and the same goes for the rest of many players in the team, to Frenkie de Jong, to Pedri, Rafinha. They're all scoring and assisting, not massively, but it's just very evenly distributed. Hence, just being 1 goal at this point behind Real Madrid, and as in terms of highest goal scoring teams in La Liga. Now, I will admit it would be nice not to have this Robert Lewandowski dependency. Xavi is desperate for it. I think that it is something that we know he talks about with his players. He wants his players to be more daring. It's also an evident, una evidencia, an evidence, or it's very clear that if and was or is Ansu Fati in his normal rhythm, in his normal, stride, in his normal peak, pre Ansu Fati injury mode, then we will be getting goals from Ansu Fati, and that is not happening. And I'm not pointing a critical finger at Ansu. It's a concerning one. It's a concerning light that I think all Ansu Fati fans, and I'm heading that list there, it's a concerning thing to see that Ansu is missing that, call it spark, call it, innate goal scoring ability. It was so easy for him when he first broke out into the scene, and such a consistent thing as well. And in clutch moments, and in, these memorable moments where he comes back from this injury to score a goal immediately, an important goal outside of the box, get hoisted into the air by Araujo. And that was not even the first time that we had seen that from him, to then relapse again and now be, I don't want to say a shadow of himself. That's too harsh and unfair. But maybe what is missing is him believing more or daring more, or maybe just that maybe something else is up. And we have said that, and I don't, I tread fine ice here. I cannot, go into this as much as I would like. But if he needs to it's just to hand this over.
It's over. let me swoop in. I'm excited that you spoke about Ansu now, because he was one of the things I wanted to speak about. But I just want to go back to Lewandowski really quickly, in that with the whole appeal thing, there was a lot of confusion by the masses of what's going on, because there was the point made that, like, okay, even if you're appealing the 3-game suspension, why is he allowed to play against Espanyol? Because that's unrelated, because he got a red card. So regardless, but where some of that confusion came, Diego, was that Barca also appealed the red card. And that also delayed the suspension against Espanyol. So
right,
that's just to clear up some of it. Whether you want to agree that that's fair or not to Espanyol is a whole different story. Lucky for them, Lewandowski was not scoring in that game, so they and unlucky for Barca, that also happened, and now he's going to miss a game on the other end against Girona. I think is the final game of the suspension.
It'll be Atletico, Getafe, and Girona.
Yeah. The Ansu thing is like, I always feel like I in some ways I play the role of optimistic Barca analyst guy.
You do.
Because I see a lot of pessimistic Barca people. And from what I've seen, and I don't know if this is actually the general sentiment, but from what I've seen, it's a lot of pessimism around Ansu Fati's like I've seen a lot
performance.
Of like, yeah, but I've seen a lot of people just look at Ansu and be like, well, he's not what he used to be anymore. He's lost it. And I don't know if I'm naive or crazy, but maybe just to remind people, he's 20 fucking years old.
Yes.
20.
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yeah.
20 years old. That's so young. So to like make this claim of like, oh, he's not what he used to be is insane. Because what do you mean what he used to be, like, what, 2 years ago when he was 18? I guess the argument and concern is, if you're a Barca fan, is that have the injuries already taken a toll of him and he's lost some explosiveness from his injuries. That's, I suppose, a valid concern. What I notice when I watch him play is that is kind of like a bit of Gareth Bale syndrome, in that what Bale's agent said a couple years ago is that Bale doesn't go into challenges like he used to because he's worried about injury.
Right.
So that obviously affects your play, your psychological ability to, like, if you're not going into every 50-50 challenge trying to win the ball or trying to be aggressive, then you're just not the same player naturally. And I just hope that over time he'll just ease into it. I also feel like he also hasn't been that bad. He's been fine.
He's
I
just
think
not
he's been,
shooting. It's the shooting. He was known as a player pre-injury to have this immediate impact and effect, and he would just shoot on goal and it would go in, create shots and chances out of nothing, and take more initiative. And that against Espanyol, he didn't even shoot once on goal, and this was sort of, these are his moments now. Xavi is putting him in as a starter, and those are minutes that we want to see him capitalize on and make an impact, and get back to being that Ansu.
Yeah, and I think like the Real Madrid parallel that we kind of have is that like Asensio after his injury was never the same. He never had that same kind of oomph. And he had a big injury. Like, it was a really big injury, right? It was the ACL.
I remember he was out for like a good season and a half or so, or
Yeah. And kind of like, to be fair, even before he got injured, he kind of had lost a bit of the spark, but he was still young enough that you'd be like, okay, well, maybe he can bounce back. But Ansu is still so young. Hi, Joya. Wow, man. Every time I see her, my mind is going about like
she's giving up. Hold on. Kian wants to say something. She's giving up her chupete, her dummy, her pacifier.
Yeah.
In 2 days. 2 days is chupete bye. Here, you want to hear Kian?
Hi, Joya. Hello. Hi. How are you? Are you in school now? She's
shy. Are you shy? Vale, pues, you can't really interrupt, Papa. No, bueno, stay.
Let her hang out. Yeah. Right. Can't put her on the spot in Churros, and this is it's going to be broadcasted to the masses. It's kind of hard. You should have seen yesterday. Arlo, my 2-year-old, just barged into the post-game podcast we did for the Copa del Rey.
Oh.
And was making so much noise and was like climbing up and just doing things. And luckily it was at the end of the podcast, so it was manageable. But yeah, you can never control it. You can never control the variable of kids. What were we talking about? Ansu? Worries, concerns?
You were talking about Asensio being the Madrid parallel. And
this is what I wanted to transition to. You're way more connected, obviously, to the Barca stuff than I am. I can kind of decipher who the reputable Madrid journalists and sources are and who aren't, so I can know who to pay attention to and who not to pay attention to. These reports about Ansu, Barca looking to maybe cash in because they're worried about, or maybe they know something that the other teams don't know about his health.
Yeah, I've read those.
Are you worried about that?
Yeah, I don't like reading those things.
Of course. All right. So, should I be worried about that if I was a Barca fan? Damn it! This is the free show. I'm gonna. Okay. So here's my hunch, and you can on Friday you can maybe be more vocal about it, or give me a head nod or a head shake. I think it didn't seem like a real report to me because I didn't see many people report it, but I saw a couple of people report it, and I just questioned it, I guess.
Who did you see report it?
Here, I'll bring up the name right now.
Let me tell you something that I don't know, but that I am convinced of.
Marçal Llorente.
Vale. I knew it. When you said Marçal,
don't pay attention?
Don't pay attention.
All right, cool.
Marçal Llorente has a very big reputation here. He was one of the people that got paid by Bartomeu. That journalists were being paid up to 300,000 as a way to report nicely on. But yes, he's one of them.
All right, I'm making a note right now, scratching his name.
Yeah,
got it.
I don't know any of this information, and Marçal Llorente, who I have an opinion of, certainly has his sources and access to information. I am convinced, however, that the club and certainly Xavi and club are fully behind Operation Ansu and getting him
As they should be.
as they should be, and getting him to be the Barça number 10, which was, something that is not just simply offered or given to any player. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal for Ansu. He actually, when he was offered it by the club, went first to the captains, the team captains, and asked how they felt about it, sort of to get their perspective, if not approval. And then accepted the very big challenge that other players who were offered the number 10, shied away from. They didn't want it. So, and he took that with I think it's been 2 years now that he's been the number 10. And with that comes great responsibility, great expectations. So pressure for the youngster, but I am convinced that Xavi will be, working hard and wanting for Ansu to succeed. And god damn, the fucking cameras continues to mess around.
The other aspect is that if that report even materialized and was true in any sense, it actually makes no sense if you're the board from a squad building perspective, from a financial perspective, because his value is not going to be that high right now.
Yeah.
Just
also
work with him and get him back on track is the way smarter, both sporting and financial decision. It's a no-brainer.
Would you have expected him to play more with Lucho?
I don't expect anything from Lucho. I don't know what
he brings up. He brings up bad feelings in you. Let's not. No.
No, I'm not. My point is, I don't know what that means. Well, what do I expect from Lucho? I expect one day he'll just start me or you in the Spanish national team and bench Maradona if he had the choice. I just don't know what to expect from him. It's completely random what he does. I don't know what he decides, how he decides it. It's random. No one knows. No one understands this.
For all his randomness,
we need a host. We need scientists to get in on this.
I'm not gonna digress into a Luis Enrique conversation. For all of his randomness, quote unquote, or supposed randomness, one thing was consistent, and is that Ansu didn't play. And, after the World Cup, in an interview with Ibai being a big podcaster, I don't know if you know who Ibai is.
Yes. I've never consumed his content, but it's impossible not to know his name.
Not to know, exactly. He did say, when asked, he said that let me phrase or paraphrase correctly. I think he said, if you would have to make the decision again, he would only change one player on the squad, meaning like he wouldn't take one player.
Yeah. And he didn't name that.
He didn't name the player, obviously. But over here, a lot of people thought or suspected he might have been hinting towards Ansu.
Well, it has to be someone who wasn't playing, right? Because it wouldn't make sense if it was someone who was playing.
Of course.
It was someone that he was bothered by off the pitch, I assume.
Yeah.
But Ansu was not known for causing problems.
No. I found that a stretch. It's jumping to a very bizarre conclusion. I mean, there are other players that didn't play. Who was it that didn't play a minute? There was somebody. I don't know, me acuerdo. Whatever. Listen, let me just go try to steer this back to the game, and I want to get your thoughts on it as well, and then we can move on. But all in all, I felt that Barça Espanyol was a game that Barça could have and should have won. The chances could have and should have gone in. They didn't. In the end, Mateo Lahoz made it a show. I can sit here and talk about referees, but I know that's not a popular topic. So I won't.
We talked about him too much, even on the last two Managing Madrid podcasts, and I felt sick to my stomach because I'm contributing to the attention he wants. I'm part of the problem. I don't want to talk about him anymore, but it's impossible not to, and that's what he wants.
Yeah,
that's what he wants, man.
I don't know what he wants. It's crazy. It's crazy because internationally he's sort of viewed as the best referee Spain has. I don't know who takes
I
that
don't
trophy,
think
but I don't
so.
think. Yeah, internet. I'm telling you,
I
in
think
Holland, I listened to like Dutch podcast, football podcasts, etc. They were talking about the what happened over the weekend, and that's how he's viewed. They're like, he's supposed to be the best referee in Spain. He's in the World Cup. He made a mess there between Argentina and Holland. I mean, they don't like him neither.
I think the word cast out of the bag, Diego. I think people know now.
Mm.
The illusion is over. But you know what though? I know people don't want to hear this, and I don't agree with it, but it is the way society works. Because he's built such a brand for himself, he's guaranteed after he stops being a referee to be on TV, to get a job in
Yeah, yeah,
media.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
he's got that locked
Oh,
down.
they're gonna
So
love it. I mean,
whatever you think
it's
about
got
him,
that on lock.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, yeah, that was a disaster. Before we move on, did you want to ask something about the game?
No, I guess what is your view on Barca? Xavi is being sort of slated and dragged through the mud. You can already see that there's a bigger divide now between the pro and the anti-Xavis. They're coming out the woodworks and hard and fast, I would say. So the confidence in Xavi is slipping amongst the more perhaps flaky ones, or those not convinced, even going to so far as to say that since Koeman there has not been a progress under Xavi Hernandez, which that in and of itself I already find absurd. I find that insulting. I find that so bizarre, because for me clearly we're still in the right direction. My faith in Xavi has not budged a bit, and on YouTube they'll call me a fanatic and they'll call me all kinds of things, but for me this team, like I said, is heading in the right direction. What we are seeing from this team is a better version than what we got from Koeman, hands down. What is missing is more goal scoring. But from this team being in first in La Liga Santander, tied with the champion of La Liga and the champion of Europe, yes, having been knocked out in Europe, but I insist that had refereeing decisions gone another way, I think we would have still been talking about potentially, most likely, a Barca in the Champions League. But they haven't. So for me, there's a fine line with what we're seeing as well. Because then also you hear these supposed culés talk about how Madrid are amazing, fantastic, tiene gran pegada. They have great finishers, which they do. But then also Real Madrid need, in the 81st minute against Valladolid over in Puzuela, a refereeing decision go their way in order to break the deadlock.
No,
And eventually, wait. The
you
1-0
didn't have
comes
to.
from.
You didn't have to go that way.
They
You didn't
needed
have
that in order to break
add
the
that in there.
deadlock. What broke the deadlock?
No, but the way you worded it was like Real Madrid were favored by the referee again.
No.
That comment.
I said they needed a refereeing decision go their way in order to break the deadlock and get a penalty call and break the deadlock. I'm not saying nothing controversial. Okay. That's all I said.
Right. I interpreted it differently. I apologize.
So, and eventually win 2-0 and get 3 points and again close the gap. Now we're tied on points with Madrid. Bueno, pues. My point being is, I think there's a fine line. I don't see Real Madrid so much superior to this Barça. I think they are, generally speaking, in better form, perhaps better fitness. Barça has had also at this point 17 players participate, a record amount of players in the World Cup. Madrid, I don't know how many they've had, but maybe some of their players are more rested. We're tied. It's tied on points right now, and I still fully believe wholeheartedly in Xavi. Over to you. I want to know how you see Xavi's Barca.
Well, I mean, like comparing forms of different teams and stuff is, I've come to realize that form means so little in when it comes down to like who's going to win the trophy at the end. you can go as recent as the World Cup with the way Brazil started, with the way Spain started, with the way Argentina started, with the way Croatia started, and how they all ended in their respective path to the World Cup final or whatever.
Yeah.
And this also just goes back to like La Liga, Champions League over the years, even the Premier League. But I think the debate about has Xavi done better than Koeman really comes down, in my opinion, yes. But it really comes down to, are you looking at the results or the process? Because correct me if I'm wrong, because from a results perspective, it's not necessarily better, right? Or it wasn't better up until a certain point.
Well, I mean, with Koeman left Barca at ninth after 12 matches. You know,
But I mean,
at this
like,
point,
wasn't there a stat that like showed Koeman's first X amount of games versus Xavi's first X amount of games? It wasn't necessarily
yeah.
better.
Look, there was that stat, and then I mentioned as well that there was from potential kind of fuckery with the numbers. It wasn't something that I kind of really took serious or started to delve into. I would like to see what the stats are now. I mean, look, again, Barca are top of the league and getting very good points. So how many matches has it been? It's been 15 matches. We're on what, 38 points? I don't know. I don't have the thing in front of me. Give me a second.
And also, it needs to be highlighted how good Barca have been defensively.
Man, like
Really needs to be highlighted.
least
Like
team
you could
with least
now, I have a
amount of
different
goals.
opinion about that. Yeah, I mean their defense has been unbelievable in the Liga. Now I have a different opinion on that when it comes to their defense in big games, whether it's the Champions League or against Real Madrid. It's a different story. I don't think their defense has been good, but just week in, week out, it's been unbelievable. The other thing that needs to be talked about is that if you replay this Barca Espanyol game, Barca wins this 9 times out of 10. Like, Espanyol did nothing outside the penalty, and Lewandowski missed at least two really good chances he would probably normally convert. Marcos Alonso had one like point blank too in the first half. I think that was the Alba cross. So
I think Christensen had one also, a big one.
Maybe, probably, I don't remember, but yeah. So like, this is kind of in some sense a freak result in a lot of ways. Espanyol don't pull this out. One of us, we never know who it is. One of us was tweeting on the Churros Twitter account during the game, and someone had asked, "I'm not watching. Does Espanyol have any chance?" And the answer was like, "No. I mean, they're getting played off the park." But the answer also was, if Espanyol somehow keep it to 1-0, they can score somehow late. They can do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's through some just shithousery or whatever, it was on the table. And luckily for them, they were able to hold it. And also Barca missing chances, and then they come away with it. And then there's just like that. Did you see the stat? I mentioned this to someone on the podcast recently.
What?
On Managing Madrid podcast, that the 19 minutes or so, or nearly 20 minutes of the play being stopped in that Barca game was like apparently a La Liga record.
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
It came from Sport, and I don't know whether that's actually the La Liga record or not, but it's a lot of time that Mr. Referee was just standing around in front of the camera for 20 minutes, basically, while everyone was confused on the field.
Yeah, it was
not. We talk about like improving the league. How about start there at least? It's nonsense. That was not football. Like literally half the game was not football. It was just one man like just walking around the camera and just making sure he's seen. It's absolutely embarrassing. Get him out of here. Get him out, man.
It's time. It's
not football.
It's time to unify criteria as well. It's time to get an understanding of why, what is what's being taken into account. I mean, for me, also the double red card should have stood.
The one to Cabrera, right?
Yeah.
Was it Cabrera?
It was Cabrera.
Yeah, he had, and it got rescinded, right? Yeah.
Yeah. uh, honestly, I don't have the energy to get into refereeing conversations or decisions. But what was it for you? I mean,
I can't remember half the things that happened. I just remember being upset because Lahoz was taking too much of the spotlight.
right.
Just being annoyed. Yeah,
But in
I don't.
generally
I remember
speaking,
that he was making bad decisions on top of that. So
generally
probably I don't know.
speaking, we can sit here and talk about it. We'll add another 20 minutes to this conversation, and I'll catch a bunch more shit for being a fanatic. But so to spare us from that having that conversation, I'll just say this: I agree wholeheartedly with those who say that the referees need to come out and talk, to explain themselves, to
Yes.
explain decisions. I
Yeah.
do not understand why certain players and coaches are being sanctioned and suspended while others don't. What's the
I
criteria?
hate that.
So yeah.
I don't, you know me, I don't like it when coaches or players come out and complain about referees. But at the same time, I think it's absolutely insane that we punish them for speaking their mind about this stuff because we hold those guys accountable. And we're basically saying, like, just shut up. Like, this is a dictatorship. Let us have our shitty referees and our shitty calls, and you guys
Yeah.
shut up. And if you don't shut up, we're gonna ban you. Like, I hate that.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta let the if you're gonna have this standard of refereeing, then you gotta let people talk too. It's insane.
Mm, mm.
I have a good transition though. I don't
Go.
know if you saw this, but there was in Sport Build, the German publication,
Hmm.
uh, had some quotes from one of their Bundesliga referees who proposed some rule changes. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
And a Twitter account, DW_sports, they put together a compilation of his quotes of proposal changes, and I wanted to read them out
Okay.
for you.
Go.
Change number 1. For a tactical foul in midfield, a free kick should be awarded 17 meters from goal. How often will we see such fouls then? That's the first one. So higher punishes for tactical fouls, like intentional fouls meant to stop play, basically.
Okay. Say that again. 17 meters away from the box, the 18-yard
Yeah.
box. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why
Another
17
one.
meters? Where do you end up? Is that like the half? No, obviously not the halfway line. But
No, definitely not. I'll tell you in a second. Well, the 16.5. So it's basically on the edge of the area.
is it okay?
Yeah. So basically, if you commit an intentional foul, like you taken down to stop a break or whatever, this is like Pep is the master of this, right? Disrupt the play. If the other team has a break, just foul him right away. So the punishment is if you do that in the opposing half, then you have to concede a free kick on the edge of your box. That's rule number 1.
Interesting.
Proposed change number 1. Proposed change number 2, if a player rolls on the floor 3 times and needs a doctor, get him one and make him wait outside for 3 minutes. How quickly do you think the player will stand up? End quote.
Oh, wonderful.
I kind of like the idea of the hockey idea where it's not a red card, but if you commit a crime severe enough, you have to sit in the box and your team is shorthanded for X amount of minutes.
I like it.
I kind of like that idea.
It's fantastic.
That way, it's kind of like
should
in
be
between
immediate,
a yellow
yes.
and a red card.
100% agreed.
Yeah. So you like them so far, huh?
I do.
Third one, quote, if a player insults a referee, send them outside for 10 minutes to cool down. Go cycling to warm up before coming back in. We can learn from the handball in that respect. I don't know exactly what he means by the wording, but the general point is if you're insulting a referee, you're out for 10 minutes, go cool down and come back when you're ready. It's like a timeout.
It's cool. It's better than giving a red card because that just ruins the whole game. So this kind of adds spice to the game and allows the player to sort of get punished, maybe enough for his team to concede a goal, but then come back and redeem himself from being naughty to the referee.
more of on that same kind of thinking. Quote, how is a referee surrounded by 10 men after a decision? In my opinion, boom, 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 3 red cards.
Oh,
Play 7 against 10 now. That'd be fine by me.
oof,
Is that
oof.
harsh?
That's harsh.
Well, isn't there's a rule? It's kind of used loosely, but what is supposed to happen in these situations if there's disagreement with a call, the captain is the one who's supposed to
Yeah,
go and talk to the
like in
referee rather than
rugby.
being surrounded, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but I think it's too hard to enforce for referees.
Yeah. Well,
But I think if we actually enforce that, like, okay, I know you guys are all mad. Captain, come speak to me. Tell me your concerns. I do
yeah.
agree with that because I really feel like I understand refs are bad at their job, but I'm not a huge fan of the idea where like 22 grown men are just surrounding
Yeah.
you and yelling at you and swearing at
No,
you.
definitely not.
That's not a fun day at the office, you know?
I I 100%, yeah, and 90,000 fans booing you and screaming your
Yeah.
murder, your death, and that is 100% true. I just feel like, I mean, my dad would say yes 100% to this rule. I think it's harsh. Maybe just send 2 off. Can we agree? I mean, I just like how it's done in rugby, and that's kind of because that's the sport with basketball that I actually personally played the longest. It's common sense. That's like common behavior. You know your place, and you know who gets to talk or who is the person talking to the umpire or the referee. So you let that person, you let the team captain do his talking, and that's just so respected. Mm, the NBA are very quick in handing out technical fouls. You see players even being ejected for giving a little bit too much of back talk or pushing up a little too strong.
I think the NBA has a lot of this stuff down. I mean, the equivalent of more punishment for the tactical foul is that the NBA has the clear path foul,
Hmm.
which is where you intentionally
Yeah,
foul someone on a break
yeah.
and the other team actually shoots free throws and there's a technical or something involved it too. I
Hmm.
can't remember exactly, but um, I think it's worth looking at. I think these are decent ideas.
Yeah, I am definitely for it. I'm definitely I support a movement such of this nature 100%. It's funny. It reminds me of. Did you hear Gerard Pique's suggestions on how to also
Gerard's PK. It
Gerard's
sounds so
Piqué?
dirty. Have you seen Gerard's PK?
It's fucking weird. You don't want to see it. Trust me. Um, he talked about how extra time, for example, you can like players get taken off as time progresses. It was something along those lines. So you end up with basically a 5-on-5 or 3-on-3 because every couple few minutes, like players come off of the opposing or of both teams for that matter. And
Right.
what else did he have? That one stood out the most. Anyway, yeah, he had some crazy ideas. He's went pretty far out there and were pretty outlandish. But
I think
I
it would
think
be
I think
cool
he
if
said
we yeah,
in
go
the
ahead.
MLS they had the penalty be taken like they do in hockey, in ice
Yeah,
hockey.
like hockey. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really like
I
that.
think yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that one. I mean, of all
Like
the
some massive
rule
blunders.
changes, that one's not as fun. I mean,
Yeah,
like uh yeah, I mean I think we should throw all these ideas in the pool and FIFA should just test it out in like a couple friendlies. Just test it.
yeah, in front. Yeah, exactly.
Uh it's no harm in trying and see what happens. I mean this is really radical and I'm not even proposing, it's just something fun. But my cousins and we got together to play FIFA during the holidays. We do this once a year because everyone's in town. And uh I was basically presented with the fact that there are these modes in FIFA that I didn't even know existed, and they
All
were
right.
so fun to play.
Oh,
Like
cool.
you can play
Like
like these
what?
5-on-5 street ball things, and
Ah,
there's one I forget what it's called, but there's this rule that every time someone scores, they get eliminated. So, like, let's say if I'm playing 5-on-5 versus Barca and Benzema scores against Barca, Benzema has to go off. So now Barca have 5, Real Madrid have 4.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going back. And like by the end of it, it's like 1v1. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
The PK thing made me think about that. Is like we could introduce some of these variables.
Yeah. That's probably where you got some of these ideas from.
The World Cup final, the extra time, and that was so insane and entertaining that like a game like that needs 0 rule changes. Like it's just incredible, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's worth playing around with some of this stuff. I think that is proposed. The name of the referee should.
The golden. Were you a fan of the golden?
Intric.
Okay. Were you a fan of the golden goal?
No, I mean,
it was heartbreaking.
No, if I'm the team that concedes. Yes, if I'm the team
obviously. Yeah, all right. Okay, so wind blows in your favor, you're on board. But if not, then you don't.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I prefer the golden goal though than going to penalty shootout.
Yeah.
I hate penalty shootout.
I don't like it either.
Passion.
I mean, we all
come up with a solution for that.
I don't know about hating with a pack. I mean, it's the moment in football where the entire world tunes in, even those, aka my wife, that don't like football. It's great for ratings. Yeah. And, you know, Tito Flo and Gerard Piqué and company, you know, they're not lying then when they say that football needs changes. And it's harder to keep the attention span of the younger generations as time continues, and the game also needs to evolve. And I mean, there is something to be said about that. You know, I think football, like real football fans, we don't like penalties, but there is something about them that just makes you sit at the edge of your seat. Your heart rate fucking goes crazy. It's undeniable, but it's cruel as fuck.
It obviously is cruel. I would say that like that World Cup final, because it's fresh in my mind, I would have much rather seen those two teams play for another hour than watch a penalty shootout, because the game was insane.
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted them to keep playing.
Yeah.
Maybe you could come up with a solution where it's like, all right, 100 no, that doesn't work. I'm just speaking out loud. I'm basically coming up with counters as I speak. But I was going to say, like, maybe you did 120 minutes, and then after that, if it's still tied, then it's golden goal. I don't know. I don't have answers, Diego, but I would like to see changes. I'm not as opposed to changes as some others are. A lot of people say, if football's not broke, don't fix it. Kind of think it is broken in some areas and it needs fixing. I don't agree with that sentiment. But
yeah.
Can I just say something about Atletico before we finish?
Please do. Hey, they're big win.
I think seeing Griezmann in that World Cup, it was great to see him back to being Griezmann, and in this one in a new role with France. But I feel like the confidence that Atletico can get from the World Cup is pretty solid. They look great against Elche. It was nice to see João Felix and Griezmann play together. And it was nice to see João Felix score. Because whether you're an Atletico fan or not, I really want João Felix to stay in La Liga because I think he's a really talented footballer. And I don't know, maybe we can get a surge from Atletico in the second half of the season. Thought it looked good.
Listen, I'm happy that Joao is still there. I was fearing for them that they would bid farewell to this very talented player. Griezmann was great also in the World Cup. So it's excellent to see him hit his stride and get back into form as well. They've got great talent. We've always said they've got great football players. And, unfortunately for Cholo Simeone, there's always this lingering question with sort of lackluster results, and crashing out of the Champions League is a disappointment and is a failure, un fracaso, for a coach with a squad like Cholo and Atletico. But that question lingering over his head. It's time to go. I mean, now there was even talks of the club having offered him to pay him out during this winter transfer market. Yeah. So
I mean,
I still think that they'll finish
talk.
third. My prediction, New Year's prediction, Atletico will finish third still.
Yeah, I mean it's a reasonable prediction for sure. I mean, just as an outsider looking in this João Felix situation, it's insane to me that they can't figure out how to get the best out of him. Like, you spent that much money on him, and you can't like make it work. Just make it work. He's too talented. You're ruining him. Just cater to his strengths. He's one of the he has the potential to be one of the best players in the world. I love his football. I really enjoy watching him play. I hope he succeeds, even though I'm not an Atletico fan. By the way, did you know that your favorite team, FC Barcelona, has a game in 1 hour and a half versus a team against that's called CF Intercity?
Club de Fútbol Intercity, claro. Alicante. They were founded 6 years ago, 2017. Interesting little club. They were put together reportedly by several YouTubers or like influencers as well. Like they helped fund this team. But yeah, I am aware of that. Yes, sir.
Who's going to start by the way, game for Barca?
Can I just add something? I'll tell you right now. Can I just add something real quick? Because I came across this news that you dropped about Marcel Llorente talking about the club wanting to or having put Ansu on the selling block for a reported 70 million. Reason number one, he says, is to lower because of his declining form.
Salaries?
And number two is the wage bill, to lower the wage bill. However, Ansu is not up there with the top paid players. So for me, that doesn't make sense. Ansu is in a scale and agreed to renew, accepting, a certain pay scale according to his age. So he is not un lastre. He's not a massive baggage. Obviously, there are economical and financial restraints in the club, but Ansu is not necessarily, he's not the one that earns the most. So his reasoning just simply don't add up, neither the decline in form nor his wage bill being too high for the club. Now, in terms of who starts, I think Ansu will start.
All right. Great segment. Great segue, sorry. I just your point about that. It's amazing how much bullshit is spewed with regards to this stuff, and people eat it up, including me today when I brought that to your attention. I've gotten to know so many agents of players, and sometimes I'll just see something and I'll send it to them like, is this true? And they'll just be like, this is BS. And then we like, and I'll literally ask them, I'll just like, why do you think this was leaked? And they'll literally say, because people need clicks. That's it.
Yeah. Right.
And in this person's case, he could just make something up and go viral, and that's engagement. I mean, engagement
farming, right?
Yeah. Engagement farming. Yeah. It's a good one. CF Intercity, by the way, just looking at Barca's Twitter, they play at the same stadium as Hercules.
There was it's a whole ordeal that I don't know the whole backstory to this, but they basically had to ask to play this game somewhere because they didn't have a stadium that met big requirements. Enough. Yeah. So
because their home stadium only seats 2,500.
Right.
So they moved it to Estadio Jose Rico Perez in Alicante.
Yeah.
Got it. I saw the video that Barca posted on their Twitter. It's Hercules, and it reminds me of Trezeguet. Remember Trezeguet played there?
Yeah, wow, that's a blast from the past. Holy shit. Yeah. They were in Primera División. They were first division team.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That was fun. That was cool. I think he scored against Barca. I remember he was all right. He did okay for them.
Anything else?
No, man, that's it.
We didn't get any Real Madrid talking points in today.
Well, good.
What should I call the podcast?
Here we go. Cristiano Ronaldo and Jorge Mendez part ways.
It's a good one. Apparently, back in November, their relationship ended. And we're only hearing about this now. It's from what I understand from the reports.
What's going on?
Did you see him call Saudi Arabia South Africa?
I did not.
You didn't see that?
That makes me really happy. I love this. I love hearing this. No, I did not.
It was in the introductory press conference. He was, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but at some point he was like, I'm glad I chose South Africa or something.
Did he instantly autocorrect? Or
no, I think he just said it without realizing what he said. I mean, I don't even, like, a lot of people were making fun of him for that. Listen, man, I would make so many mistakes if I was listening back last night. We did the podcast for the Copa del Rey
that's
game.
Bad though.
I listened back to it and that's pretty bad. But last I realized that I mistakenly called Casarena last night twice.
Wow.
So like I'm sympathetic in the human element of this. People make mistakes. It's not a big deal. But yeah, Saudi Arabia, South Africa.
It's not a good look.
Places. I'll just leave it there. Yeah.
That is not a good look. Well, is Mendez one of the agents that you text to see if this is true or find out the read? No.
Is what true? Did he say this?
No, the parting ways between these two.
I do not have Jorge Mendez on my WhatsApp.
Oh.
He is beyond my reach. Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
There are levels to it, man. There are levels to it.
There are levels. Well, in that case, I think we have reached the end of today's pod.
Good luck against CF Intercity. My prediction is that it'll be not as comfortable as you think because that's how Copa del Rey goes. Yeah,
trust me.
Remember the Ibiza game?
Yeah, that was nasty. Artificial grass. But only certain. Let's not complain about the pitch because only certain people are allowed to do that and get away with it.
When it's as bad as it was last night,
then yes, mention it. Then it's okay. The double standards continue. Okay, all right, bud. Yeah.
Some people just can get away with it, I guess.
Dude, it is striking to see the news outlets. Literally, these memes have been going around the way certain news outlets treat Xavi when he talked about bad pitch, or when Carlo Ancelotti do it. And the headlines that read Llorón, crybaby, they calling him a gardener expert, to then saying, razón completo for Carlo Ancelotti, like completely in accordance with this person. And the same journalists from the same news outlets, just...
Well, what I'll say is that,
like I said, double standards.
It's one thing to complain about the length of the grass. It's another thing to compare about basically no grass, which was what Real Madrid played on last night.
Well, Ibiza, it was artificial pitch, man. Like serious injuries could have happened there. Anyways.
As a Canadian who had no grass basically growing up, I don't understand any of the complaints. We played on artificial grass or just rocks. So, because the weather is just not good enough to have good grass here.
Yeah. Oh, right. Really? I mean, super green, no? Canada?
If you're playing at a professional level, like, it's not bad. If you're playing in just a small town growing up, it's just basically like my high school it was a hill. Like literally there was a curve on the field. It just bumps up in the middle and then it just covers back down. And then it's just weeds and rocks and mud and stuff.
You have to run uphill.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
And then see the ball come downhill and then run downhill.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
Let's wrap it up here.
Let's wrap it up.
Just a note to our listeners, if you like this nonsense, go to patreon.com/churros for an exclusive podcast once per week. We took a bit of a break over the holidays, but we're back at it. 2023, it's back on full force. So if you want access to that, patreon.com/churrositacticas. Thanks, Diego. It was fun.
Thank you, buddy.
Good catching up. Take care, buddy.
Definitely. Peace.
All right, man. Good episode.
Very good. Very good. Sorry, I'm hearing the kiddos screaming. It's dinner
all good.
time. Kind of had
Yeah.
to wrap it
All right.
up.
What
All right.
do you want to do Friday or?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's do Friday.
Friday's good.
All right, man.
Okay, bud.
Good chatting. All right,
Definitely.
talk soon.
Take it
Peace.
easy.
Take care.
Ciao.